Hello, my lovelies, and welcome to the Heartland Hot Dish podcast. This is where we come to the table and rediscover the connection and meaning to our food and culinary treasures of the Great Lakes region. Join us as we discover the traditions and stories woven into the fabric of the Heartland cuisine, from the iconic dishes that define the Midwest to the hidden gems waiting to be discovered. We'll take you on a mouth-watering journey through the diverse culinary landscape of the Great Lakes area. Get ready to indulge your senses and ignite your appetite as we explore the rich tapestry of flavors that make up the Heartland Hot Dish. Well, hello, my lovelies. So we're going to be pondering pierogies today. Marcy, you want to get us started into this world of pierogies?
I would love to. So I am going to be that person. I'm going to set the record straight. It's pierogi.
Oh, jeez.
Well, at least we did that early this time, right?
Right. It's
Great. I've got a grammar snob in my podcast booth with me. I'm going to sit over here and eat my clementine and not listen.
Right.
For
And it's Garrett, right, just for the popcorn. Just all right.
It's acceptable to say pierogies, especially in the Midwest, but traditionally it's pierogi when we want to say plural, and pierog for singular when we're talking about.
Is that true in Poland too? Or is it just over here?
It's true in Poland.
Oh, jeez, Louise. I just wanted you to be wrong just for a second.
I can be wrong, and I could be wrong about this, but last I heard, Michigan has the third largest population of Polish
Oh,
immigrants.
wow. I don't think I knew that.
In the country, and or it could be the Midwest, but so I don't know about you guys, but I grew up with pierogi my life because friends would have them. They would be with their grandmothers and their aunts and their mothers making them for Christmas or whatever the case might be, family dinner. And what's not to love about dumplings?
Oh, she said it. It's a dumpling.
Officially, it is a dumpling.
It's a dumpling.
Officially, it's a dumpling. Although I think I mentioned this before the podcast. The Russian term for it means pie. So I think there's like some reference.
Hey, it's got a top, so we can call it a pie.
It's official. We can call it pie.
No
Right?
topless pies here.
So, for those of you who want to understand the reference, tune into our last episode about apple pie.
Yeah, for sure.
To hear Kieron's definition of what is actually a pie.
Legally bound. It's
yeah.
legally in the UK.
Yeah.
Can we also try to define dumpling here? Because what I had a friend. Her name is Deanna Fox, and she described dumplings, I think, in a perfect way.
Ooh.
And it was food stuffed into another food.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To Dunkins of food.
Thanksgiving's right around the corner. So, I mean, what's not to love about dumplings, but dumplings stuffed in with potato and cheese, caramelized onion, right? Or you have the sweet versions with the sweetened Cork or farmer's cheese, maybe some kind of a fruit filling. I mean, we could go on and on and on about what you can do with these.
Not mention sauerkraut.
Sauerkraut. I'm so sorry. Sauerkraut, right? Everybody's favorite pickled cabbage.
Not everybody's.
Not everybody's.
But it's great for your gut health. Eat more sauerkraut.
Especially if you get it from the brinery.
Oh, I love the brineries.
Such good
Do you
stuff.
have their Storm Cloud Zapper, the red one?
No.
Oh, Storm Cloud. What about you?
I don't know if I have.
Oh, it's really good. It's got a little bit of ginger in it. It's got a little bit of bite. I like the Storm
Ooh.
Cloud Zapper. Sorry, continue down the story of your dumplings.
My dumplings, my Polish dumplings. And they're so versatile with how you can cook them, right? Traditionally, they're boiled, but you can pan fry them like a Chinese dumpling, or you can air fry them, deep fry them. You can line them up on a baking sheet and throw them in the oven, right?
I might argue that when you pan fry them, you're not pan frying them like a Chinese dumpling. You're pan frying them like something else. But
Okay.
I know, right?
Right.
The Chinese dumpling technique is it's very specific,
specific.
kind of.
The dough is just so different when it interacts in the pan as well.
Sure.
It's not so different, but different enough that it makes it.
And you're kind of going for a different thing in the pan frying. But maybe we'll get to that in a little bit. Hopefully we will.
Yeah.
Cool.
And there could be a totally like more traditional way that we do this, but even when I do my Chinese dumplings or my pierogi, I tend to put the water in the bottom of the pan, let it evaporate, and then brown. So that's what I'm thinking of when I'm thinking pan fry. Yeah.
Chefy Kieron can't do that.
Yeah.
I don't have time. I don't have time for that. I'm a boil
Boil all the way to
room
the person.
temperature, cool,
Right.
and go back to sauteing.
Yeah.
Have to play that game. When you're doing like 150, 200 pierogies, I don't have time to play the game.
Just sit there and watch and wait. Yeah.
Oh, Daniel has some feelings over there. We're gonna fall out, and then we're gonna come back to falling in love.
No. I think this is really about more with Marcy than with you.
Yeah. Probably because this is not the way you actually pan fry Chinese dumplings. I'm guessing this is probably
No. Actually, I think your technique is closer to the Chinese dumpling one, which is interesting because that's not how I do pierogies.
okay.
In the right, but we'll
go into
we
that
can
one.
table that. Yeah.
I feel like part of this might have to do with too the fact that when you're making them at home, unless you're making pierogi from scratch, and if you are, usually that's more of a group effort, right? I don't have time to make pierogi from scratch, so I do get mine frozen. And so if you're taking a frozen dumpling and putting it into a pan and pan frying it, typically.
Oh, that's not going to work at all.
Well, no, you have to put water in the pan.
Yes, right. Just as a side note, because we probably won't get back to the dynamics of Chinese dumpling frying, but the thing that I really treasure about the Chinese dumpling frying, which is the thing that happens when you put the water in and through the lid, is that you get that lacy starches that sort of crisp up on the outside. Right?
It's like a whole thing now. Like that's become that bougie chef like twill that they make now just for the sake of making them.
Oh, that's interesting. I've not encountered that in the bougie chef world.
Right, like all that world of the slow rotation of what's cool right now as different twills is making those starchy. So they will literally just use a potato starch or a rice starch, and they'll color it like with an herbed oil, and they usually make that starch. They'll do it around a dumpling to form that starchy finish on them.
Right. And for me, when pan frying the pierogies, it's all about. Have you ever pan fried them with onions in the pan?
Oh yes,
onions on the outside and onions on the inside. Right. So for me, doing the pan frying is about really caramelizing those onions too. So I wouldn't want to do anything to get in the way of that.
Right, like dousing them with water. Totally makes sense. I only caramelize onions in the pan if the pierogi doesn't have onions in them already, and I have to add onion myself.
Do you have to be a purist of what's going in that pierogi? Like, is there a must, or you cannot play, or are you okay of like when I make tamales, I'll make like breakfast tamales that have nothing. There is nothing tamale about them other than I enjoy those ingredients with the corn mustard. Do you have to always have the potato?
It depends on what I'm eating them with.
Okay.
So if I'm doing Polish sausage of some sort, then I prefer it to be just straight up potato.
Put Polish sausage in the pierogi?
No.
Oh, I got really
as my
excited
meal.
there.
Right.
Like,
if the pierogi is with something else, like as a meal.
Right. You could eat Polish sausage in a pierogi.
Absolutely.
It sounds amazing.
I want a brat in a sausage in a pierogi. Like a really good brat in there sounds delicious.
You guys traditionally, Polish put either potato or some kind of a cheese. They were typically or sauerkraut. They were typically pretty simple, right? But these days, you could go to like Schrodek's and Hamtramck, and they've got this grand menu of pierogi with all these different types of fillings, and people might have mixed feelings about this, but you could get like a cheeseburger filled pierogi. You could get like a Reuben style.
I'm missing out.
Yeah.
In upstate New York, obviously, there's a place called Chester's Smokehouse. That was a Polish place, and they made their own pierogies there. And because it was upstate New York, they had a buffalo chicken pierogi.
See, I'm on board.
Schrodek's has a buffalo chicken.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
See, to me, I think it's when I think of the history of like a pierogi, is that the potato came from the U.S., wasn't back home in Europe, got brought to Europe, and then became such a traditional food back like in Poland, and then came back. It's a dumpling, which means it has. We're going to get into the history a little bit of like where it did come from and that past. But the reality is like, I find it fascinating that potato didn't exist in Europe. This thing went over there. Oh, this is a traditional food of Europe. It's not that. And I think it's the timeline when you're over here in the US, like anything like 1600 sounds old. I'm like anything with 3 digits is old to me. And I think like the fact that like, pierogies are from the 1600s, I'm like, okay, that's relatively new. That's not that traditional.
Right. Right, because this feels traditional to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but I think the history of it being like a dumpling, and there's like I like that this one has the connection to Marco Polo. Anytime I can use the Marco Polo reference, I get very excited. Like that slow import from Asia, whether pasta was originally like something that was brought over in the same way. There's always that good fight from the Italians. The same here with the Polish of what that is. Do you put sour cream in your dough?
I have never tried that, but I've heard of it.
Okay.
And again, I don't often make them from scratch. but-
Anyone who's given me a recipe, and people have over here over the years, are like, oh, you got to try my pierogi dough recipe, because the dough is more the thing.
Right. Well, and this is actually one of the things I was really curious about, and why I was glad to be sitting in with two chefs, right?
Yeah,
right.
Marcy, Chef Marcy.
Chef Marcy,
Yeah, girl.
Where's my chef hat?
right?
We're gonna get you one for
Right.
the podcast. Now we're doing video.
Right, because I know about about eating, and I know about food and how things taste and textures, but I don't know sort of the mechanics of how they are different. Right, I know that pierogi dough is not pasta dough, right, and that it's thicker, but I don't know exactly what gives it that texture.
Yeah, it's more of adding to me. So this is me is adding that fat. Whereas pasta dough does not need to have egg, which I think is another one where you can have the non-egg pasta dough, or you've got the egg pasta, and really the only fat that might be in there is olive oil. This is where you've added some kind of dairy. So adding that sour cream, which is, I'd have to say like 80% of the recipes anyone's ever handed me for a pierogi dough has had sour cream in it, or some version of make your own sour cream. So cream, and then some vinegar to make your own, like to split it down. I think that to me, that change of the mechanics it is, and it's a much tougher dough in how it's held together. So the percentage of flour is much higher. I've never had anyone define you must use this type of flour though. Whereas pasta is like, please use this, right?
Right.
I've made pasta plenty of times with AP flour. I've made it with soft baker's cake flour before, and pasta works just fine. Don't worry, it's not as good, but it works just fine. No one's ever been snobby about the flour in a pierogi.
No.
Italian cookery has some very specific guidelines. Right.
It's the
The
Italians.
DOP stuff goes deep.
Goes deep. It
Goes
does
deep.
go
It
deep.
goes
in
deep.
that world. I think like the pierogi dough that I've always seen has been very relatively simple, and it was much more of an eyeball thing. The fact that there are recipes, you get lucky because it's usually like, here's the ingredients, make it work.
Right.
It's usually like great grandma gave it and showed you how to do it, and there was no recipe.
Yeah.
Right.
The idea being it's just very simple, and this is something that's just passed down.
At least it's edible, unlike a pasty dough, the world of pasties where you're meant to just have that. As
Oh,
that
you went
protective
there.
casing.
We're gonna get to that later, so right, but not today. Right, but I was thinking about the dough, right? Completely escaped me.
Oh no, I think that if you're like other differences, I think that a pasta dough fully hydrates, and I'm worried about it. I'm not as worried about a pierogi dough. I'm like, I can make it. I might rest it a tiny bit because it's going to be a bit of a pain to roll. It's rolled thicker.
Right.
I'm not trying to get thin. And I'd say that's the elasticity that you get from pasta flour and you get from letting it fully hydrate is different. I think that when you think of pierogi dough, there's not a lot of flavor of the egg in there. It's much more of a vehicle that's done a good job,
Yeah.
but isn't like, oh, delicious. Whereas pasta dough, it has some good texture. You've probably got some semolina going in there if you're lucky in that world. It's much more like, and when you say dumpling, I always think of the different dumplings, the kind of dumplings that I have in a stew. That's where I go first because my mum always made drop dumplings. I think of more like it's more of a homey, clean, like simple crust kind of
Yeah.
pastry that goes on the top.
It needs to be somewhat tender, right? But it needs to be able to stand up to boiling and to
Yep.
be able to retain its fillings.
Yeah, it's like a blanch. I think
yeah.
when you cook pasta so it doesn't dissolve when you're making lasagnas, you are boiling that pierogi dough to stabilize the starch.
Right.
Sorry, here. We're coming back to the fun in just a second. But we stabilize the starch to hold it. You've taken out the boiling water, you let it rest, and I usually will drizzle oil over it at that point so it doesn't stick. I'm not putting in ice water,
right.
and then it's making its way back to the pan pretty quickly.
Right.
And then I'm adding a metric ton of butter because if it's not fried in butter, what's the point? I've interestingly next week have vegan pierogies, which is fine. Like you're vegan or you can't have dairy for a real reason. I can make you a pierogi and it's fine. But it's really a vehicle for sour cream and butter.
Right, and I agree. And that was the other part with Marcy's, frying them like a Chinese dumpling, right? Because
Yeah.
if I'm frying pierogies, they're going in butter.
They're going in butter, 100%. I have this image of a friend of mine in college who also grew up with pierogi because his family is way more like Russian background. And so these were a regular thing for him. And just him trying to explain to me his grandmother's pierogi and just saying the way, she would slather them in butter and then douse them with sour cream, and that look on his face when he was describing it, was just, it was like he treasured, his grandmother's pierogi, but had to bring up the fact that it was all about the sour cream and the butter because
It is funny. It doesn't have any like acidic cut through. Like there's no
Right.
dipping that you have. Like as a dumpling, oh great, I've got this sweet chili dipping sauce. I've got some kind of soy sauce. I've got something that's going to cut through all this fat.
right.
The Poles are like, nope, I'm all
Yeah.
good. I will
Like-
take all that fat. I don't need anything
Yeah.
else. You got some of the acidity that may be coming from your sour cream.
That's what I was going to say.
Right.
Sure,
yeah.
but like there's no
That
like kick
tartness.
in your
Yeah.
face to like wake you up. You're just like, I'm gonna go take a nap now. It's nappy time after my pierogies.
So when I lived in Chicago, I actually lived in Ukrainian Village, and this would have been late 90s, early 2000s, right? So at the time, Ukrainian Village was rapidly transitioning more into like a Puerto Rican neighborhood, actually. But you still had like these traditional Polish delis right down the street from me, and one of them being Kasha's. So it was a regular thing for me to trip across Western Avenue from my apartment over to Chicago Avenue to go to Kasha's, and there you could get a bundle of Polish goods for nothing, right? So you would get your fresh pierogi, you would get sausage, your packet of sour cream. They had these amazing.
Would it come in a plastic bag, the sour cream, like a little baggie? I remember getting that when I lived in Poland. Like my sour cream would come in a little plastic
In
baggie.
a little
when I-
plastic baggie.
Yep.
I would get ours in a tub, but
Okay.
yeah.
I love the little baggie. You get a little bag of sour cream, a little
Right.
bag of sauerkraut, and then you got your bag
Yeah.
of. They weren't going for multiple different packaging options at that
Yeah.
point.
Do you snip a little corner of it and use
Yeah,
it as
you
stir
did. It was a
squeeze?
piping
Yeah,
bag.
yeah.
There
yeah,
you go.
yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
Well,
little
you could
piping
do the
bag.
same for the sauerkraut to drain off the juices because I like to drink that as a drink.
Ah.
I do like
Yeah.
a bit of
The
sauerkraut.
actual the juice.
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. No,
brine. Yeah.
you definitely want to like take a little nap after that too. The amount of sodium you're getting in your body at that point, but good times. Sorry,
Yeah,
continue.
Yeah, no,
Did
get
you
your
have that as a
sauerkraut.
lunch? Was that a lunch or a dinner thing? Because I've used pierogies as a chef. It's normally a cocktail hour,
Mhm.
maybe an amuse. It rarely makes it to the main course, which is kind of bums me out because it's a great dish. But especially in the wedding industry or event industry, it's a little more cocktail hour. Or it's a snacky thing. It's not that. Do you have them as a dinner thing, or is it more of a lunch thing?
It was a little bit of both. I was single at the time, so I just
Sure.
ate whenever I wanted. You know,
Had a good
It could be
metabolism.
breakfast.
Everything was fine.
Yeah, like breakfast after a night at the bar. You know what I mean? Like, ooh.
Breakfast.
But I really
Right.
like them as a side, right? Like
Yeah.
as Marcy was saying with the Polish
as
sausage,
your, as your
right?
potato,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
as your potato starch.
As the starch, right?
Huh.
Yeah.
See, I've always had them as an exclusive. It's a dish,
Mm.
and I want to eat them as like a ravioli. I want to have them as their thing. Lots of sour cream. I tend not to do the sauerkraut at home. It would be sour cream, the pierogies, and then I'd have some kind of sausage because I usually have brats because we make them out of the farm, and I love our brats, and so that beery taste is like perfect with a pierogi.
Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah, definitely brats. But I always like to get like an assortment, so that like I would just kind of go all out sometimes, like with all of this right at your fingertips, like might as well take advantage of like all the sausage and like everything that they have because again, it was just like you could get this all for a song.
Sure.
And then,
No, and it's proper like working
Yeah.
person's food. It really is.
Yeah.
Like it was
yeah.
easy, cheap, ready to go. It was manual production.
Right. And if you're
Well,
tapping into the
pierogi were also definitely like a miner's food. In
Yeah, yeah.
Poland.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or you're
so-
tapping into, this Polish cuisine, and there's no reason to, limit yourself to just potato, right? There's a lot of deliciousness there.
Well, I think
go,
that,
go
like,
deep.
When you're making the caramelized onion, so you've made like caramelized onions many times. Both of you have,
Mhm.
right? Okay. What's your method for a caramelized onion? Right? So like I used to be like a bit of a snob and I was like, what are you doing putting water in there? Don't be a loser. Like just watch your onions and be careful. Where's your caramelized onion game? She's gonna say something weird over there, isn't she? She's
No.
gonna. I use sesame
well,
seed
the-
oil for some inexplicable
No,
reason.
no,
No.
no, no, because I make a lot of French onion soup. It's one of my favorite things to make. But I
And
will.
next time you come on a podcast, you're bringing me some.
Yeah.
You said you're making it all the time. That
I
means
will-
it's
I
sitting in
will-
your
I will
fridge.
bring you my French onions.
Brrr, I love it.
Uh, so I will caramelize the bleep out of my onions, and when I do, for me it takes a while, but I'm scraping the.
But is it like nicely, finely sliced onions? You got oil in the pan.
Oh yeah.
Is the pan medium, low, hot?
It's
How do you start the game?
Gotcha.
Sorry,
Finally,
there's a lot of like feelings about this one, even in the chef world. There is no right way. There is just many
Right.
ways.
Mhm.
so finely sliced. I start the pan hot, but then turn it down as like the bottom of the pan starts to
Oil?
brown. Right, butter.
Butter, just butter.
Butter.
Oh God. Okay. Turn it down,
Mhm.
and then slow and low. Nothing else. Salt.
Pretty much, yeah. Salt.
Sprinkle of salt.
Sprinkle salt.
It's been a long time because I used to do the Cook's Illustrated technique, right? And it was just hours and hours and hours, and it was really low and slow, and it was a pain in the ass to do. And they were amazing,
Sure.
amazing. But I don't really do it anymore. I just brown onions.
When you make your French onion soup, do you put anchovies in it?
No.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So
I don't know if that was a good or a bad.
No, it's fine. I think that like the anchovies when it dissolves is like adding garlic. It's
Right.
it's
Okay.
the umami kind of. I can
Right.
never say
You
that
can
word.
add the garum too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you can skip the.
Yeah.
Can you say umami again?
No. There are many things I should not repeat or say. I'll just have a button on my deck that says words I can't say. Oh, that would be really good. It could be like a really nice British name. Like, what's the guy that is it? Cumberbatch. You can't say penguins. Have you ever seen that podcast? Or
No.
that episode? You ever seen that? Okay, if you're listening, stop what you're doing. Pause the podcast.
Don't
go on
pause the
YouTube.
podcast.
No, pause the podcast. It's totally
just come
worth
back.
it.
Just make sure.
It's
you come
on a Graham Norton show, and he's trying to say penguin. He was doing some documentary, and it's Cumberbatch who did it.
Yeah.
And he can't. It's penguin, and he says it like 3 times during this podcast. It's hilarious. I am Cumberbatch with many words, and I'll stay in my word. I was gonna say, like for me, as a chef, there's like the way I do it at work, and then there's the way I do it at home. And I think me and somebody else have been talking about like another version of a podcast I want to do of like what you do after you get married, like all the things you need to know. I'm like, well, somebody needs to know how to make caramelized onions when you've got 20 minutes. And I want 20-minute caramelized onions. And they exist. And they exist in a pretty good way. Like I can get you to an 8.5. And so that's where you add the water. And I'm not like, it's not my favorite thing. Like I'm not saying it, but God, does it work? So it helps to like pull those sugars out. It lets them evaporate, and then you do it again and you do it again. And it speeds that up really well. The other one, which is maybe the one that no one will ever really do, is to do those in the pressure cooker. Pressure
that's
cooker all
interesting.
day long will make that magic happen really quickly. I only say because that's the real flavor that I get when I have a good pierogi, more than anything. I want a really good potato. I want a good amount of butter in my potato, and then I want great caramelized onions. Garlic or no garlic?
Garlic.
Garlic, no garlic?
In the onions?
Inside the pierogi,
Oh,
at
inside
least.
the pierogi? Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm an equal pierogi lover. I love
Oh,
carbs.
you're going to be fine with like the potato and cheese and nothing else in there?
So, right, yeah, yes, but also very frustrated because my wife, who I love dearly, for her a pierogi can only have potato in it. Potato and cheese was almost a bridge too far.
Sure, I know we're going to do the podcast on the pasties, but I feel the same about a cheesy pasty. I'm like, what are you doing? This is a beef, rutabaga,
What-
carrot thing. Leave me alone.
What about chive?
Sorry?
Try. Oh no.
No
Right,
poll has gone, ooh, let's get me some finely chopped
But it's
chives.
out there, right? Is it? What is
Well,
it?
we've
Mrs.
also talked about buffalo
Mr.
chicken
Mrs.
pierogi.
T's pierogi. Doesn't it have like potato and chive or something?
sure it does.
Yeah.
right. And
I
and
want some
right.
some Hidden Valley Ranch chive dips.
Sometimes
My
people
God,
want a little color, right?
Ranch
Right.
pierogi?
Right.
I could get on board with a ranch pierogi. Like homemade
I
ranch
think-
flavorings.
I think you need to make this.
I might make that. That
Yeah.
doesn't sound like. There's a lot of Midwesterners that I do weddings for. That might be a thing.
Right.
I've-
I would
think
do
so.
the pierogies
genius.
dipped in ranch. I'd have the ranch on the side for the
I
pierogies
might
instead
shut
of the
down
sour
the podcast
cream.
and walk out.
But-
That's it. I'm done.
But what's the filling?
Oh, I think the potato is still the potato filling.
Still the potato.
Still the potato, probably just potato with the ranch as a dipping thing for the
Okay.
right. And I would pan fry those ones.
So Alex at the
or maybe even bake them.
Alex at the Roadhouse. Sorry, we're drifting, but I'm going to come back. I've got a piece of paper that tells me not to drift, and all I do is drift. So Alex at the Roadhouse, when we did artichoke dip,
Mhm.
in his recipe, it would ask for Hidden Valley Ranch powdered ranch seasoning on it because it was that like. I need to know that it's like Hellman's mayonnaise. Sure, you can make homemade mayonnaise, and it's great. I love homemade mayonnaise, but Hellman's has a special place in your heart, in your mind, and it's the same with that Hidden Valley Ranch like back taste in there. And
We haven't done an episode on ranch, have we?
we have
Nice.
not.
No, that's we. I'm going to make a note because we're
Ooh.
going to go back because we're going to do ranch because
It's a good one.
it's an important one, and when we should
It's a-
dedicate some
it's
we
a-
should dedicate some time.
I don't know if it's. I don't know any of the history, but it feels like a truly American thing.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
come
It
across
is.
it anywhere
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
sorry.
All right.
We're gonna find the Hidden Valley. Maybe we'll do the podcast in a Hidden Valley. Okay. Sorry, I have drifted us far and wide. So garlic, no garlic. You're like okay with it.
I'm fine with right
Is it-
as right.
Is it classically meant to be in there? Or is it, I don't know classically. Is it historically meant to be in there? I can't imagine they were doing garlic in their onions back then.
That's a good question. I'm not really sure.
I could
but-
imagine they held on to garlic a little more sparingly.
Right,
Like
and
it was a
well,
harder crop.
I was just still thinking about your thought about the onions and the caramelized onions because there's this difference between caramelized onions and browned onions.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. And I am perfectly happy with browned onions in my pierogies. Right, like that. I'm not looking.
I'm a
for
hot
that.
dog onion guy. Like I like a quick, fast cooked, scorched on the outside, still somehow
Yeah.
crunchy, like the
Yeah.
texture's still there. I'm not against that.
Right, right,
Which
right.
is- That's basically how we do it at the Roadhouse. If
Yep.
you ever, when we have the pierogi from Shodix on the menu, please come by and try them at Zinger's
They're
Roadhouse.
fantastic. They really are.
They're wonderful. We do that nice, almost crispy, browned caramelized onions with them, along with brinery sauerkraut.
Why do you think pierogies are sold unblanched? Is it just out of not doing it where they make them? Because if you sold them blanched, like boiled and chilled, it'd be so much easier as a home consumer to then use them.
Oh, that's interesting.
That is a good question.
Like I think we need to revolutionize the
Do you know
pierogi.
for sure that they aren't? Because I know a lot of people just buy them frozen.
That's
if you're gonna
true.
do pierogi, they're usually just in your frozen.
I
section.
just think if you were going to sell me a pierogi, I don't want to put a pot of boiling water on and then fry them. If you told me they were ready blanched and I could just fry them, it's got to stabilize and hold them long. I'm just sitting here
Right.
thinking, like, if I ever made pierogies and tried to sell them,
Right.
I'd
So
want them.
But you don't have a very long shelf life. Then you'd have to cook them.
I think you
quickly.
could still freeze them.
Once they're boiled.
Well, so we've done that with sausage. We've sous vide'd our sausages when we sell our sausages at the farm, and the reason we do that is that the home consumer gets scared of like pork sausages and cooking it all the way through to the center. I don't know why, because it's not that scary, it's not that time consuming, but there's this fear that this sausage isn't going to be cooked in the center, and so we try to take that one step away. And like the pierogies, I want to take away my boiling pot. Like I don't want to get in the way of that. That might be a good thing. Hey,
Right.
pierogi makers, when we get you on a podcast and we get you out here, because clearly Marcy's going to go and get us a couple of producers to talk to next time. We can convince him. I'm sure it's out of production, right? Because you're probably getting no more money if you sold them blanched.
Well, so I was trying to get some pierogies for the kids' international dinner at their school.
Yes,
Right.
I love
right.
those dinners.
And that and that was for my wife's heritage, right? Because she grew up with pierogies in Western Pennsylvania, and we were going to the Polish Village Cafe, and like I mentioned, right, it was potato only, and the question was whether we get these boiled or pan fried, and so they sell them in trays to go already boiled.
Oh,
So
they
you
are
could,
doing
so you
that. Okay.
could do that, and certainly you could do that there. Unfortunately, that international dinner got canceled because of some sort of power outage. I was able to cancel my order. These guys
Oh,
were
I was
very
like,
gracious.
and I still picked them up and ate all pierogies.
Right
with them.
now, I was tempted, but we had made some other plans. I feel badly for all the other families who were actually making food for 25
Those
people.
dinners are
Right.
super fun. I've missed that. I
Yeah,
think we
right.
only ever did that for our oldest Henry. I
Right.
think the pandemic took that away.
I'll let you know when the next one is because
I'll
they're
come
open to
cook.
everybody. Yeah,
I'll come cook.
it's amazing. But that was when we had this really heated conversation about what makes a pierogi, and as I mentioned, my wife grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and for her a pierogi was a very different thing because while there was a Polish community there, they would get pierogies from a place called Kanzati's, which was their Italian delicatessen, and it turns out
So weird.
I know. It turns out that when Italian delis make pierogies, they do it with a pasta dough, right? And
No harm, no foul.
no, they're delicious, and I've had them, right? And they sort of read as pierogies, right? A little bit thinner skin, but they're served more like ravioli. They still look like the half moons. They're still in the same basic shape, right? You still get all of that. That we fry them in butter, right? So it's butter with all of the onions, and I get to eat all of the onions, but it's just a potato and dough experience.
So, I mean, you're a buyer. You're a buyer in general, right? Not a maker. How do you feel about folks who use those like dumpling presses? Those little clamshell plasticky dudes. How do you feel about those? Rather than hand crimping. Do you care?
No, no. I mean,
Like on
whatever
fundamental
floats your
level,
boat, I
do you-
guess, if you're making your pierogi from scratch. And I feel like the half clam shells, you could do a lot of other things with them because, like,
Yeah.
it's not just pierogi that have this half moon
Yeah.
shape, right?
What was amazing was I got to go behind the scenes at Chester's Smokehouse in Albany when they were still there.
Okay.
And they. I can't remember if they said that their pierogies were handmade. I believe they did, and I was I gave them a little bit of business about this because they were handmade but using a machine.
Sure.
Right, but the
It's like
machine,
Amish pies that have those big pie presses, those wooden like
right?
press downs that
Yeah.
seal the tops.
So they actually did have to sort of hand crank the filling through the machine, but the machine created these really fully stuffed pierogies that looked like they were hand crimped, but
Yep.
they weren't. So, and they were wonderful. When things get really that's how Gonzades does it, right? It looks like a machine. It doesn't even have a flourish around the edge. It's just a straight couple
nice.
of lines.
Okay.
Right. So it's they're not pretending to do this, but of course, right? Like having the being able to see that these were made by hand, it is a special thing.
I think like when I think of those presses that you can buy at home and use, and we've got them in our house, making them by hand, if I make it a small amount, game on. I'll do them 100% by hand. You get me above like a 30, use the press.
Right.
Roll it out, cut it. The thing I love that we've got at the farm is we've got a sheeter. And so you can just roll out a big old load of dough, cut them with a cookie cutter, and then I can hand them off to anyone. Because then anyone can get you started. And even if you go back and you recrimp the edges, I don't want to take away the value of a hand crimped pierogi. I just think that the value it is in making it, doing it well, the ingredient, the process of making the dough, of cooking it, and what it is. That crimp definitely has like the textural fun piece of it. I think that's the bit where in today's society it's much harder because you would have had 5 or 6 mums and grandmas standing around a table making pierogies for the family or for the holidays. And you said it was a holiday food much more than an everyday food for a long time. It was more of a celebration thing because it's like Chinese dumplings. That is not something you just make. I mean, we've become so used to them because now they're mass produced in a factory and you can have them anytime. That was a labor of love, not necessarily just a quick hair now. And that's where you had to do it for years to get fast at making the dumpling. I've seen people and I'm pretty good at crimping and filling. And it's like the way you learn is put less filling in to start with, and you get more and more filling as you get better at it, and the stretch just right. But God, that's hard. Like the speed of that, watching somebody do that with their big hand, when their hands have swollen up from doing it for years, that's just a cool thing.
Oh yeah, no, and these are such a labor of love, a pain in the ass to make. Any type of food where you have to make each piece individually.
Yeah.
Dear God, right?
I love it
It's
when
an art.
people ask for them for cocktail hour, and I'm like, Tabitha, how about an amuse where they get 1 or 2?
Yeah.
Because a cocktail hour pierogi means I'm making, like for 65 people, how many do you make? Like most of my job is guessing, right?
Sure.
A good educated guess. 65 people, how many pierogies do you make? Have I got linebackers coming in, or have I got a bunch of, grandmas in their 60s?
Or
And
do you have a petite young lady who loves pierogi
Right.
coming in and shoving her face?
we've had people who you wouldn't believe stand there and eat 8 or 9 of them back to back to back. I'm like, oh God, this isn't going to go well. And like, it's a hard game because we usually work on the basis of like 2.5 to 3 on most things. But pierogies tend to be one of those things that we have to make an excessive amount. One, we like to eat them. And like when you've done that in a restaurant or you've done it in like a wedding venue, you want to have some left. If you've spent all that time making them, you better have some left at the end because I want to eat them.
Yes,
right? Like
right.
You're not undermaking them. You are definitely
Right.
overmaking them in that world of what it is. So go on. We had some other places we want to talk to. I know that we had talked a little bit about the history of the pierogi coming over as a dumpling from China, the Marco Polo piece. Anyone want to talk on that piece? Because it's a lost history. Like, it's not hard and fast. It's a little bit like, where does pasta really come from? There isn't a like, yes, it's this. Yes, the Italians made it. It wasn't the Italians, but it's fine. But the Italians are going to come after us when we say things like that out loud. But like, there is a little bit of a lost history as far as the pierogies are where they've come from now. Anyone?
Kieron, go for it.
Oh,
Lee?
Lee
got
Lee
it.
is not on camera. You can't see Lee, but Lee is gonna.
We're talking about the voice of God.
The
right?
voice of God,
voice of
our R&D research and development over there.
Voice of history.
Right.
There you go.
So I did a little research, and I can reflect on the Polish history of pierogi. And according to the research I did, it dates back to the 13th century. They were, as you mentioned, Kieron, they are imported from the Far East via the eastern neighbors such as Kievan Rus, which is today's Ukraine. And that we have Hyacinth of Poland, a monk in Kiev, in a Kiev monastery, who eventually became the patron saint of pierogi for bringing them to Poland.
I think they did that so they could claim pierogies.
Yeah.
Just to be
And,
clear, I think there's still some debate there,
so
and
they were
they
more-
sainted someone so they get that they are ours.
And they were more popular in the eastern borderlands of Old Poland than in the West. And then the first written recipes for pierogi come from the, excuse me if I butcher this, Compendium Furculorum, a book published in 1682.
See, that makes much more of a sense for me for a date because I got potatoes back in the world. Like,
Yeah.
what's in a pierogi in the 1300s?
Not potatoes,
Yeah.
but,
It was mincemeat.
but
Oh, well,
rather kidneys, veal fat, greens, and nutmeg.
I don't think that would be such a big seller.
not these days.
No.
So that
Kidney
sounds like
So,
a boiled
and then,
pasty.
and then we have that recipe. We could thank Stanislaw Czernecki, who published his book in the late 17th century.
Yeah, so that's the potatoes coming over and taking over that place.
But
Good.
well, I will say a popular filling today, which we didn't really talk about, is cabbage and mushrooms.
Oh yeah.
You do the
Yeah.
mushroom ones
Yeah.
for sure. Mushrooms are very
Cabbage and
divisive.
Right.
as
But
well.
cabbage and mushrooms, yeah, I'm
Yep.
all over that.
Like a really good sauteed dark cabbage as well, like where you score. I don't know if we must have talked about this on the podcast. My love for cabbage is very high. Like a sauteed cabbage as a side item, like charred, like caramelized, like onions
Sure.
not caramelized, just scorched really quickly. People should eat way more cabbage.
I will do cabbage in all forms.
Especially
right.
the way
I will boiled cabbage.
With the way the
Right.
world's vegetables and all of our shopping's so expensive, cabbage is a really good plate filler and honestly very inoffensive to most children who are picky. Like both my 9 and 11-year-old will eat a sauteed cabbage.
Cabbage can get sweet. Cabbage can get
100%.
so sweet. But
Yes.
right, but I think it's like what had happened with Brussels sprouts. That so many people had bad ones that it's ruined it.
Well,
for so many
they've got this
folks.
boiled cabbage
Well, they- yeah,
imagination.
they-
yeah, boiled.
But I will do boiled
They
cabbage
cook
and love
Brussels
it.
sprouts to
Sure.
death. So.
I do think like when you talk about like that, sorry, we're gonna come back to pierogies, but like that cabbage side of thing is just very fascinating because it emanates from a very like poor sense. Oh, all you can afford is a cabbage.
Mhm.
But like a big green cabbage for a family of 4, that's 2 days worth of a side item veg in there, huge filler for other things. So you don't have as much of a more expensive veg. That thing is a great supplement in there.
Well, I think
110%.
there's something to be said too about it being used as a filling because I know, like, as a formerly picky eater as a kid, I didn't mind cabbage in like an egg roll or some kind of a dumpling, right? You know, as a filler.
Yeah.
Heap it up on a plate, forget it.
Oh,
Is
see,
it-
Oh yeah, no, I
I love a really hot pan, and I love to saute it like hot
Right.
onions. for
Right.
me is
I
my
also
go-to.
love a really long, slow braise with some onions.
Sure.
Right. That's
Yep.
that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. We'll come back to pierogies.
I had a question. So I read a little bit about sort of the Russian version of pierogi, and what is quark cheese?
Cork
I've
is like
nev-
a farmer's cheese.
Like
so it's like a
fresh,
crumbly
fresh
white.
young cheese.
Yeah, it's
So
a
they like theirs with potatoes and
it's the
quark
cheese-
cheese. I've never heard
it's
of
like the water of life in France of like homemade hooch. It's like cheese that you make in your back garden. Like the Austrians make a version of it up in the mountains as well. Like it's just a quick, fast crumble cheese.
that.
It's
Tangy.
still used. The
Yep.
first time I ever tried it, it was actually an accident. I purchased a box of Kasha's frozen at the store because you can get hers frozen now.
Sure.
it was supposed to be potato and cheese, and somehow it accidentally ended up being the cork cheese. And so when I bit into it, at first I thought it was just like separated or something because you had that texture.
It has like
and
a
it's
scrambly
crumbly-
egg kind of experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was a sweet one.
Oh.
It was like a dessert pierogi.
Ooh,
So
okay? Sorry, because I've had a dessert pierogi.
uh-huh.
Dessert pierogi.
I have not tried them. I'm not opposed to them.
Dessert pierogi had them.
Do I have them?
Like, have you ever had one? Like,
Yes,
that's a
absolutely.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
it. Dessert pierogies are like really fun. It's
Are-
like
are they-
dessert
are they-
tamales.
I want them to be fried.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Same
It's
same
kinda
game.
Like a
Right.
like a fried
Actually,
hand
I
pie.
I want them to be deep fried.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, deep
I
fried
mean-
like a deep fried hand pie.
Sure. No, I think of it like a hand pie, and you can put all the things you experienced and wanted to have in there as hand pies. Like to me, like those wonderful apples or berries and things like that. Pierogi dough is a really good launch for that. And why I say I love that you went the pasta route, because if I'm gonna have a dough in my fridge, have one dough and then use it lots of different ways. So if you are gonna make homemade fresh pasta, go for it. Like it's not wildly different enough to hurt the pierogi, but at least you're then cooking at home and knowing that you're going to execute these things.
And I think it's really interesting. You know, what I had read was that the Marco Polo thing was a legend and not necessarily
Sure,
supported
it's
by
like-
evidence. But what I would like about that, right, is that it does connect that Italian and Asian
Yep.
thing, and it also fits in with this pierogi thing as well. It's like look, it's all the same sort of dumpling thing.
I think that there is no real new thing. There's a variation on a thing
Mhm.
that was out there. We'll talk the ancient apocalypse and the one nation thing that's currently out on Netflix. Or all of this, there's just one nation. They love dumplings and they spread across the world far and wide.
Right. Well, I was gonna say in regards to the dessert pierogi, like so again, this is purely by accident that I was eating this sweetened, farmer's cheese pierogi. It wasn't anything that I didn't want to try again. I just think I would just wanted something else like in the actual pierogi with the cheese to make it maybe even sweeter, So like adding fruit alongside that farmer's cheese to me was key. And so the next time I tried one where it had apples and the farmer's cheese in it was like taking it to a whole new
The
level.
one I had was a cheese potato pierogi with quince in it.
Quince, there you
And
go.
Ooh.
yeah. Like
Absolutely.
quince,
Mhm.
forgot. I mean, it's out there. People not know about it, but I think it had its time in the sunshine in like the 90s, 2000s, and it's kind of stepped back a little bit. That flavor of quince inside a pierogi is for the win. Like a really good paste of that, because it's again like a chutney. Having that chutney taste in there is a really good.
There's still
experience.
potatoes in the dessert one.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Right.
to be clear, us Brits, we smoked potatoes before, like literally as cigarettes before we did anything else with them. We didn't really understand what the potato was for a while, and so we did it with lots of different things. Sweet potato dishes are kind of cool. I mean, when I think of that, it's like the American sweet potato pie, of abusing that as really just a base ingredient as a holder for everything else is not a bad thing, because inherently potatoes aren't anything. Like they have a flavor. It's not like, and there are different varieties and they have the flavor. It's really the fats and the things they hold on to. So it's more like a transport device to me than anything else. So we would have those for sure.
Sure, and I think you used to use sweet potato in two different ways, right? You were talking about sweetened potatoes.
Sure,
right,
I
right,
did
right,
both. I went
right.
We could talk about yams versus sweet potatoes.
That's right.
That's,
What's
that's a
the-
whole different episode.
What's the East Asian the most consumed starch vegetable? Taro. Is it taro root? Taro. I think taro.
It would not surprise me.
I think taro is more consumed than potatoes. So it'd be interesting what a taro version of a pierogi.
Right.
I bet there's something like that. I bet there's a dumpling. I should probably go look.
And I think it's going to depend on where you are in Asia, right? If
100%.
you go to northern Western China, it's going to be potato.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
But that's almost Russia, so
It's almost Russia.
almost Russia.
Russia's ginormous.
I know.
I mean, it's disturbingly of a ginormous. And
11 time zones.
well, and 11 time zones, and really is made up of vastly different cultures.
Yes.
Like they never homogenized under one, and really they just chose to be one.
Thank you,
big-
Mongol Tartars.
Yeah, and not even maybe not chose, imposed on that they were, but the Russians, for many faults that every nation has ever had, they never really tried to homogenize them. Because they were so desperately different locations of these communities that they've stayed relatively independent.
Also 11 time zones.
Yeah, right.
All right, thank you negatively.
We're coming to the end of our pondering our pierogies, and I ponder them no more. You mentioned a couple of places to get them, and so the folks that are listening, we've definitely had that question of like, where should I go get pierogies? So I know the Roadhouse gets them. Where did you get them from?
Oh, from Shoreditch.
From Shoreditch.
In Hamtramck.
And do you have them on the menu all the time now? Like they become swings and roundabouts?
It's a special. So we bring them back seasonally. I think we're getting to the point, like during wintertime is typically when we bring them back. So
Okay.
probably I would look for them within the next couple months. We do them vegetarian, however, you can add bacon.
Of course you should.
And of course you should. I think I mentioned the brinery sauerkraut
Yep.
that we add to those. We created this dish to put on the menu in honor of someone who used to work for Zingerman's.
Oh, Stash.
Stash Kazmierski. So for those of you who are familiar with Zingerman's and are visioning, the art of visioning, Stash was the one who introduced us to visioning.
And pierogi. Well, he didn't
And as
introduce the
well.
pierogi, but he had a deep-rooted passion for them, that's for sure.
For pierogi and his Polish heritage. So we named this dish after, we call them Stasz's pierogi.
Very cool.
And we get them in from Shoreditch. And we don't get the crazy cheeseburger or the crazy Reuben.
We get a special variety brought in for us to try.
I do want a cheeseburger or a pierogi.
I do want a cheeseburger pierogi too. So
With sour cream.
Make a special trip to Shoreditch and Hamtramck. They don't just obviously have pierogi on their menu, but they have sausage and a million other
All the other goodies.
Polish delicacies.
Anywhere else you'd recommend to get them from?
I don't know about locally, but if you're in Chicago, Kasha's, of course,
Yep.
all the way.
And when you were at Cash's, were there any other varieties, or was it really the caramelized onion potato and cheese?
I haven't been to Kasha's since I lived there, so I don't know.
It
what
won't
their
have changed.
I don't know how their menu has grown. So for me, traditionally, it was either the potato and cheese, or potato and onion.
Oh.
Yeah, or sauerkraut.
Oh, I've got,
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
Daniel's got his eyes. Got their eye
Well, no, I mean, I was kind of thinking about, when you talk about potato and cheese, because we really didn't even get to this, because there's, classic, sort of the Polish cheese that might be in there, but there's also sort of the more American version of it, of cheddar. So when you say cheese, you're talking
Yeah,
cheddar.
you mean British cheese.
Not British cheddar.
So Kasha's, you have the option of doing the cork or the cheddar. I think, like, if you're buying more like the frozen from the grocery store, it's going to be cheddar.
Sure,
Yeah.
crowd pleaser game.
Mm-hmm.
What it is.
Right.
I definitely prefer a cheddar out of that's my cup of tea, and I'll put bacon inside mine.
Right.
guys.
Or sprinkled.
Where
bacon
did you
on
get
top.
them for your dinner?
So I ordered them from the Polish Village Cafe, but I never got a chance to pick them up. So, but I'm gonna be going back there because specifically, even though they use the more traditional dough, they do make a just potato, and it can be hard to find pierogies that are just potato without cheese in them, which was really important for my wife.
Okay.
So we're going to be going back to the Polish Village. They were great to me when I talked to them on the phone, so I certainly recommend them. And then if you find yourself in, it's more like central Pennsylvania, around the Johnstown, Altoona, Bedford side, Canzati's Italian Market is where we get those Italian versions.
Cool. Should I give my recipe?
Yes.
So this is probably from 8 or 9 different people's recipes that I've used, and it's not my own at that point. It's really all of theirs that I kind of took the best of the bits of all of them. Super easy. So it is in grams. I'm so sorry, all of you. You got about 630 grams of all-purpose flour. You got 104 grams of eggs, which is really 2 eggs. Just 2 whole eggs. You got 110 grams of sour cream. You got 40 grams of a good oil. I usually use pumice oil. Ari, don't judge me. And then I'll use 4 grams of kosher salt and about 164 grams. Well, not about exactly 164 grams water. Makes you about 68, 65-ish pierogies that are each portion of dough is about 15 grams. You can roll it out and you can re-roll it. Like the dough gets tougher, second and third rolls, but it's fine. So you can get about 65 pierogies, which is an appropriate amount of pierogi. For a family of 4, like that's not a bad amount. Like most people eat about 6 to 8, and you want to have a few for the next day. Like it wants to be like a thing you can have and re-microwave. And you're just making a dough. And I could read you the way other people have told you to do that ingredients. I would put all the wet ingredients in the bottom. So you're putting your egg, your sour cream, your oil, your water in the bottom, put your flour and salt over the top of it with a dough hook, put it in a KitchenAid, give it 2 or 3 minutes, take it off, knead it, go. There's better ways, but if you're just cooking at home and you want to make a dough, that's pretty good in there. And leftover mashed potatoes are my win. Like I've always got leftover mash in my house on a regular basis, and then I'm just adding quick sautéed onions more than caramelized, or I'm doing the 20-minute quick caramelized. But my wife hates onions, so
And are you putting cheddar in there too?
100%.
British cheddar or American cheddar?
No, so this is where, God, I'm such a snob. So this is where I'll add expensive cheddar.
Oh.
Right. So
Right.
it's like I'll have posh cheese on toast on a regular basis. Like I'll have Lincolnshire Poacher's cheese on toast.
Okay.
Like what a terrible human being. I take this amazing cheddar, don't represent it by itself. I have to melt it on bread. But I'll take Lincolnshire Poacher's. I've done Mimolette. So the cannonball one that you use for, God, what is it? For fondue. So it's like the fondue.
You use Mimolette for fondue?
Oh, yeah. Mimolette.
Oh.
Mimolette's like the fondue cheese.
No.
It's 100%. That's how I was introduced it. So it's a really
we'll dig this one out later.
It's a really, 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 really hard orange cheese. It's shaped like a cannon and it looks like a cannonball.
And we're used as cannonball. That's a whole other story, right?
We will. I'll also use some good Stitcherton or a good blue cheese like Bailey Hazen Blue in there as well.
Yeah.
But it's usually
in
the
your
cheese.
fondue.
No, we're going to. But yes,
I'm still stuck on the Mimolette in the fondue.
We should do a whole thing. Can we bring fondue back? Because I love fondue.
Right.
Yeah.
I've still got my mum and dad's fondue set they got from when they got married. But
Wait, we can tie it in with Midwestern cheeses. I
Nice.
think. Yeah. Okay.
So I'll put any of those cheese, and I usually have a little bit of more left, and so sometimes you get a blend. But I'm a bit snobby of the cheese that makes it way into a pierogi. I don't think you have to have something good, but I want to punch flavor in there because again. Dough's probably relatively plain. Potatoes are relatively plain unless you've got nutmeg in, and I do put nutmeg in my potatoes. But I want that like kick of flavor in there.
And if we're thinking about Midwestern cheeses that we could throw into a pierogi, Pleasant Ridge Reserve, I think.
Ooh, Pleasant Ridge,
amazing.
100%. I
Amazing,
definitely
right,
use Pleasant Ridge.
Yep. Oh, right, and if we're thinking about Midwestern cheddars, right? Street ched from Cincinnati.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you know what
Heck
my 9-year-old has?
What's that?
American.
American.
They have a quarter of a slice of American inside a pierogi.
But it melts really well.
I usually say there's no swear words in these when I have to post them, so I won't say it, but he effing likes it. He loves that American. And honestly, it's not the worst thing, because I've eaten some of his that are left over, and it's not really flavor. It's all about texture, and that ruddy, gooey orange cheese in there is not a bad thing.
I'm with your kid.
Some.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming to the end right now. Thank you so much for pondering pierogies with us. We'll get this podcast up quick. This is going to be our second.
One burning just for
didn't ask for the burnings.
just for the listeners, because I have encountered in my life this interesting Italian-Polish hybrid. But my assumption is that throughout the Midwest and communities everywhere, there are going to be other interpretations of pierogies, and I would love to hear in the comments other things that we have missed.
No,
I would love to.
There's a whole subculture of dessert pierogies, 100% out there. I love that there's buffalo chicken pierogies out there, or an abuse of a different firm. I mean, you heard what I told you was our dough that we use out at the farm, the one I've got, and that's a blend of other ones. But there's got to be some weird and wacky ingredients.
Oh yeah,
Definitely tell us, dear listeners, what your favorite
Yeah.
pierogi are.
And you can get those down in the comments soon to be coming. We're going to have our website up and running for us. It's going to be under the Great Lakes Foodways Alliance website. That's where hopefully all the information from the Heartland Hot Dish podcast will sit. But being able to get this will be the second one that will hit YouTube for us, just so you three or four are aware. 3 of you, or including me.
4 including you.
I speak in the third person. This is the second one we've recorded with video. Bear with us with our video being okay. We're going to find ourselves a cute home. We currently have a home. Hi, everyone. You can see doors. The angles of our cameras are not the greatest, but we got to start somewhere, and this is where we started.
Our lighting is fabulous, though.
Our lighting is fabulous. We just got to not get the shine off the top of Daniel's head. That's all it is.
I'll wear a cap like this.
Oh, I like that.
That's right.
There you go. All right, my lovelies. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, my lovelies, for tuning in and listening to today's episode of the Heartland Hot Dish podcast. Hit that like button, subscribe, and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more listeners just like you. Until next time, keep savoring the flavors of the Heartland and sharing the love for this vibrant community. Take care and stay connected.